Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of our Arctic Voices online family event series, where we'll be taking a closer look at birds of the Arctic with Parks Canada. My name is Dana, and I am the curator of our Arctic Voices feature exhibition gallery here at Science World. And today I'm joined in the studio with Madeline and Brian, who you may have met in the chat already today, who will be helping to keep things running smoothly behind the scenes as far as all things technology go. We'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are grateful that Science World in Vancouver, British Columbia is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations in the village site of Sanok. These First Nations have a very deep relationship and understanding with nature, and we here at Science World are helping to help others have a close connection with nature too. And that's what these talks are all about. So thank you again for tuning in with us today. I would like to pass this over to our featured guests joining us today from Parks Canada's Western Arctic Field Unit, broadcasting live from the Arctic. I'm going to hand it over to you, Ellen Preston and Kyle Mustard.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. Did you hear all the birds? There are a lot of birds here in the Arctic.
There are, which you might be surprised to find out, actually.
So we're going to be talking about that a little bit today. So my name is Kyle, and this is my colleague, Ellen, and we're from Parks Canada, all the way from the Western Arctic Field Unit. So the Western Arctic Field Unit encompasses 3 national parks, 1 historic site, and 1 national landmark, dispersed throughout the Northwest Territories and the Northern Yukon. Today we are speaking to you from Inuvik, Northwest Territories, 200 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle, in our studio tent here. And we would like to acknowledge that we are on the land of the Inuvik and Gwich'in. The 2 national parks that we will be talking about today are managed by Parks Canada, the Inuvik and the Gwich'in.
So today, Kyle and I will be sharing information about the bird monitoring program Parks Canada operates in Inuvik National Park. Inuvik is located in the northwest corner of Yukon Territory. To the north, it's bordered by the Beaufort Sea. To the west, it's bordered by the Alaska border. To the south, it's bordered by Vuntut National Park. And to the east, it's bordered by the Babbage River. Inuvik is 9,775 square kilometers, or approximately double the size of a Stanley Park in Vancouver. The park hosts incredible tundra, Arctic coastline, mountains, and offers spectacular wildlife viewing opportunities to see grizzly bears, the porcupine caribou herd, and a lot of different bird species, making it an exceptional area to research migratory birds. Parks Canada's bird monitoring program here began in 2009 and seeks to record the decline and richness of migratory bird species that rely on Inuvik's summer tundra habitat. The program is one of 5 measures monitoring Inuvik's tundra indicator. The other monitoring measures rely on permafrost, remote cameras, large-scale vegetation change, and the caribou population. Before we dive in, we'll start with a couple quiz questions.
All right. So I know that a lot of you would have heard about what migrations are before, but what do you think a migration is? So when animals move from one place to the other, that is a great answer. So way to jump in there. So to summarize, the migration is the process of movement from one region or place or habitat to a new area. So birds migrate to new areas to maintain their access to resources. The most important resources birds migrate for are food and safe nesting locations. In this part of the world, many birds move north for spring and summer to take advantage of insect populations, which there are a lot of insects up here. Luckily enough, we're in town today, so there aren't that many that are coming after us. They move north for the bugs and also for budding plants and an abundance of nesting locations. And the return of the colder temperatures means that they migrate back to southern habitats for winter, like Vancouver, or even further south than that.
All right, so our second quiz question is, can you guess which migratory songbird or songbirds are the most vocal in Inuvik National Park during the spring and summer months? Well, American robin seems to be taking the majority.
I mean, there are a lot of American robins everywhere.
There are, yeah. They are a very common species.
A white-crowned sparrow coming back. All right.
Hmm.
So it looks like the American robin won in our poll.
But it's actually all of the above. So from our research, we've learned that the American robin, the white-crowned sparrow, the dark-eyed junco, common redpoll, and yellow warbler are the most vocal in this region of the Arctic during the spring and summer months. Out of those 5 species, white-crowned sparrows and American robins were identified as the most dominant vocalists in Inuvik, while the common redpoll, dark-eyed junco, and yellow rump warbler have a more varied vocalization activity. These 5 species are the most vocal populations in Inuvik during the summer and spring. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have the biggest populations in Inuvik, but it is a really good indication of this. The birds migrate up to the Arctic each year as the ice recedes and the temperature increases. Roughly 90% of birds that breed in Canada migrate, and it takes them usually 3 to 4 weeks to arrive at their destinations. You've likely seen or heard some of these birds as their migration routes are located in Vancouver, or they may just live year-round in the Lower Mainland due to the temperate climate down there. And before we continue, we'll test your bird knowledge a little further.
So can anyone guess which bird tunnels into the snow to stay warm during the winter when they're in southern Canada?
Oh, it's pretty
even.
Yeah.
People know their birds. So no love for the common redpoll, which is unfortunate because it is the common redpoll that does this every winter. So the common redpoll will actually build itself its own little snow fort by tunneling in about a foot into the snow, about 4 inches deep, and that keeps them nice and warm because snow is a really good insulator. And they'll do that in southern Canada because it's still too cold for them up here, but in a lot of areas in Canada, there is still a lot of snow. I know you all in Vancouver probably don't get very much, but there are a lot of places in Canada that still get a lot of snow in the south.
All right, moving on to our next question. Which species' total population was recently estimated to be approximately 630 million individuals? So we've got the American robin, the yellow-rumped warbler, or the dark-eyed junco to choose from. Oh, American robin.
Makes sense. Lots of robins.
Lots of robins, yeah. Wow, taking the lead by a long shot.
Yeah. Yellow rump warbler, bringing up the back right now.
Well, those are all great guesses, but it is actually the dark-eyed junco, and it's one of the most common birds in all of North America, and it can be found from Alaska down to Mexico, from California all the way to Newfoundland and Labrador. So in Canada, this little bird is coast to coast to coast, all over the place. Pretty cool. As you can imagine, the Arctic is a much more extreme environment than Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, and the birds are only able to visit for a short period each year to breed. Many arrive when there is still snow on the ground and do not leave until after the first frost. Despite the short visits, their ecological and biological contributions to the natural environment in Inuvik are really, really important. Specifically, migratory birds are known to contribute through eating insects, and we do have a lot of insects, dispersing seeds, pollinating plants, and serving as prey for predators.
So Parks Canada is especially interested in observing and recording the health of birds as a reflection of the overall health of the wider Arctic ecosystem in Inuvik National Park for a couple of important reasons. Birds are a great ecological indicator for change in natural environment because they live through a wide variety and range of landscapes, are easy to detect acoustically, like we were hearing the birds earlier, in comparison to other animal groups, and occupy different levels of the food chain. So these 5 birds that we're talking about right now in Inuvik are on the lower end of the food chain, and we will be talking about another bird a little bit later on that follows these birds in their migration and eats them along the way. So the Bird Monitoring Project is especially interested in understanding the richness and abundance of migratory birds in Inuvik and how these populations are responding to the changing climate. Migratory birds are especially vulnerable to the changing climate as they rely on and travel through multiple habitats and sites on their migration routes.
And you may be wondering how Parks Canada staff record all these different types of bird vocalizations in Inuvik National Park. As we mentioned before, Inuvik is quite remote and there are no roads leading into the park, so it's only accessible by aircraft, making it really difficult for Parks Canada staff to access it, even during the spring and summer months. To overcome this barrier, Each ARU is protected by a weatherproof case and an additional steel enclosure to protect them from the occasional curious grizzly bear, as well as other wildlife disturbances. Using ARUs enables us to study when specific species stay in the area, the intensity and frequency of the bird's vocalizations, as well as species diversity. Arrival dates of migratory birds are actually super important to keep track of, because recent research has found that birds are arriving about 2 weeks earlier than they usually would in the past. We found that this is usually linked to climate change. Specifically, the birds are experiencing changes in their weather as they are moving through their migratory routes, which is kind of confusing them and causing them to come early.
So the recording that we listened to earlier was recorded on one of these ARUs. And park staff use the recordings to track how many migratory birds are visiting and therefore know how healthy the bird populations are. We'll take a moment now to listen to the recording again. And I just want you guys to all listen in and tell me how many birds you think that you can hear out of this recording, and then just put that in the chat. So we have one person that's answered 3 so far. Anybody else want to take a stab at it? It is really hard to distinguish.
Even I don't know the exact number.
Oh, there we go. 5, 4, 3, 4, 5, 7. To be completely honest with you, your guess is as good as mine. So I've heard 6 distinct birds in that one little recording, but it's really hard for us as people to then distinguish these from one another.
Parks Canada began using these autonomous recording units in Inuvik to track migratory bird populations back in 2018. We currently have 10 individual ARUs set up in 2 different locations, and approximately 1,590 hours were recorded. 1,590 hours is equal to about 66 days. You may be wondering how we keep track of the individual bird calls we hear on these recordings. Since it would take one of our scientists almost a full year of work, or just over 2 months without any sleep, to listen to all of the recordings, we have turned to technology to listen for us. We use a computer program that can separate each individual species of bird from the larger recording.
So you can see here, the horizontal part of the graph tracks the speed of the call, and the vertical part tracks the volume or frequency of the call. So I'm going to play you an American robin first, so you can see that vocalization on the screen there. So the software that we use separated that from that bigger recording. So the American robin, as you can hear from that recording and see on the visual sound graph on the screen here, the robin's call rises and falls in pitch, but is delivered pretty steady rhythm with a pause before the bird begins singing. Robins also make a repeated chirr that rises in volume and can sound like a laugh or chuckle, which may be what we see at the end of the graph there. All right. So we're going to go on to the next one, which is our white-crowned sparrow. This one's one of my favorite. It's a very pretty call. So the white-crowned sparrow song is the most frequently studied of all sounds in animal behavior. Despite different subspecies singing different songs, they can all be identified by the sweet whistling introduction, a succession of jumbled whistles, and a buzz or trill near the end. As you can hear, their songs only last a couple of seconds, but they are really pretty, and these are the ones that I hear the most in the park.
Mm-hmm. We'll even hear them around town. We were listening to this earlier today, and a white-crowned sparrow outside actually was responding to us, which was pretty cool.
So the next one we're going to listen to is the dark-eyed Junko. So you can hear just how different that one is too. So dark-eyed Junkos have a high, short clip note, and they often give in rapid succession. As you can see on the sound graph here, it is usually faster when they fly around and slow as they forage. And the note may encourage other Junkos to follow it. So you can see on the graph just how really short it is, but it goes really up and down really fast. So it's really kind of cool. So next we're going to go into the common redpoll, the bird that likes to burrow and make snow forts. So you can hear there that the redpoll songs are a combination of their call notes given in a long string, lasting up to half a minute, considerably longer than the other songbirds previously mentioned. Common redpolls have three main calls: a chatter of several sharp zapping notes, a nasal rising whistle lasting nearly half a second, and a rattle or trill that lasts nearly a second. So really cool and varied calls. And that's how this computer program can separate this. Next, we're going to go on to our yellow rump warbler. And this is our last bird call that we're going to listen to. Also super pretty. One more. So yellow rump warblers, males sing in a slow, soft, sweetly whistled warble or trill, which is why they're called a warbler. So the pitch is mostly even, but may rise and fall slightly, speeding up as it ends. So songs last only a few seconds, but they can consist of up to 21 individual notes. So I can't sing in 21 individual notes.
No, me neither.
Especially in a couple seconds. These birds have a huge vocal range.
It's really quite incredible.
So this program that we use is so sensitive, it can even pick out individual birds of the same species for us. So like humans, birds have different voices and accents depending on their parents, where they live over winter, or who they even like to hang out with. Our scientists still like to check on the program every once in a while to make sure that it's accurate. But this software doesn't take nearly as long as it would for us to try and listen to it ourselves. And it's far more accurate when you get all of these bird calls together and it can separate them down. So it's really good for us to see these overall populations of the park.
In addition to songbirds, another migratory bird we've observed in abundance in Inuvik and nearby Junko National Park is the peregrine falcon. Peregrine falcons were once under serious threat in Canada, but following the ban of certain pesticides during the 1970s, their population has made an incredible comeback. The falcons frequently nest along cliff faces, overlooking river canyons, making Inuvik and Junko very appealing nesting spots. So not only can they be seen in our national parks up here, but they're also quite common sights in city centers as well, especially when they nest in high buildings. Peregrines have made such a comeback, in fact, that they are one of the most widespread birds around the entire world. They can be found on every continent except Antarctica, as well as many oceanic islands. In Junko, surveys are conducted every 5 years, with surveyors paddling down the Old Crow River in kayaks and canoes and tracking the number of active nests and chicks. These birds have a super important impact on their ecosystem because of their role as top predator. And similar to the songbirds we discussed earlier, they are known to respond to environmental changes and disturbances, such as toxic chemicals, human activity, changes in breeding habitat, prey abundance, and climate. Migratory birds, such as the ones we have discussed today, are vital additions to the Arctic ecosystems, as well as the ecosystems they inhabit down south as well. Our research on these populations allows us to gain valuable insight and knowledge on how the broader natural environment and ecosystem in the Arctic is being impacted by factors such as the changing climate.
So now we have one final quiz question for you before we move on to questions from the audience. Which animal of these two do you think is faster? I know when I was growing up, I was always told that the cheetah is the fastest, but what is your opinion on this? What do you guys think?
Look how long the cheetah's legs are.
He's so springy.
He's so springy.
Yeah. They actually use their tails for balance, which is super cool.
Oh, that's really cool. Wow. I wish we had cheetahs up here.
We just had a little bit of a technical difficulty there. The Arctic internet isn't the most reliable,
no.
but we're making do. So for everyone who said peregrine falcon, you are absolutely correct. So I was always told that the cheetah is the fastest animal. In fact, it is the fastest land animal. But yeah, so the Peregrine Falcon can go to 320 kilometers an hour, which is about 3 times as fast as this cheetah. The cheetah's the fastest land animal. Peregrine Falcon is actually the fastest animal in the world. It is such a small bird, but it is mighty. What they do is they actually dive and stoop down at their prey. And what they'll do is they'll go in and then they'll pull up and hit it with their claws. And that will instantly basically kill any rodent or other bird that is trying to prey on. So imagine that you're driving just outside of Vancouver on the Trans-Canada Highway, or your parents are, and they're driving at about 100 kilometers an hour. So that's about as fast as the top speed of a cheetah. The Peregrine Falcon's going 3 times as fast. So it's pretty incredible.
Incredible. Yeah, you can kind of see it in the photo on the screen there. It's like tucking in to increase its chances and its target flying down to hit its prey.
And they're very, very accurate with it. So they will actually dive and stoop at people if you get too close to their nests, but they won't actually hit you. They'll do it kind of as an aggressive warning shot.
A little bluff charge.
Little bluff charge. And I've definitely been dived at by some Peregrine Falcons before because they're really good parents.
So now we'll take some questions from the audience if people have them. Yeah.
And I can help field some questions here as they come in from the chat. So audience, this is your time to ask Ellen and Kyle anything that you'd like to about their Arctic bird research or just Arctic birds in general while we have them here with us today. And they're going to try their best to answer those questions for you.
You can even ask us what it's like to go into Arctic parks or anything else too. Very, very cool. I'm originally from the South.
Me too.
And just coming up here, it was an incredible experience.
Oh, we do have a question. What's the weather in the Arctic now outside the tent?
So we decided to put up this tent today because it was raining earlier and it was only about 8 degrees. But it has warmed up and got kind of sunny. I think it's probably going to go up to about 13 today. Sunny and blue skies now.
Oh, nice.
But earlier today it was around 6 or 8 degrees and I had like full toque on, was planning to do the presentation with a big scarf and mitts on. So the weather varies here by quite a bit. And I think next week it's supposed to be like 27 degrees.
We actually have 24 hours of sunlight. So the sun doesn't go down at night.
All right, thanks to Sarah Kaya for asking that question. We have another one from Ling that says, you talked a little bit about the fastest bird. What is the slowest bird?
Oh, that's a good question.
I'm not entirely certain. I would probably say one of the owl birds, like a goose. They're not very fast. Mm-hmm. That would probably be my answer for what's the slowest bird in the Arctic. But I would have to do a little bit of research for that one to know what the slowest bird in the world is. I'm not even sure that they would have that stat.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's true. Many
geese in the water are also really, really slow.
I was just going to say it's true. Many things that we ask sometimes haven't even been researched yet. So perhaps another great research question out there. Richard is asking, what is the greatest hunter bird that you know of, maybe in the Arctic, or he's even saying the world?
Ooh. I can answer this one because it's actually a really cool stat that we have in the park. And this one's actually, I'm not sure if it's been fully researched, but from traditional knowledge here and from my Inuvik colleagues, the greatest predator of caribou in Inuvik National Park is actually the golden eagle. Wow. It will actually swoop down and take out a baby caribou, and it is the biggest predator of caribou in the park.
I wouldn't have guessed that. That's such an interesting answer. Along with record-breaking birds, we have a question from Victoria of what bird has the fastest heartbeat?
Oh,
I think it's the hummingbird.
Yeah, that sounds right.
It's definitely the fastest wings. Again, that would be something that I would have to do a little bit of research into. My guess, and that would be an estimated guess, would be the hummingbird. And we do get hummingbirds up here occasionally, and they're very cool. They're also one of the only birds that can fly backwards, and they have a very, very fast wing beat.
I'm learning so much about these birds that I didn't know today here as well. A question from Sarah Kaya. What kind of animals do you see outside of the tent? So just in general, aside from the weather, people are really wondering what life is like outside of the tent.
Yeah, around town, there's a lot of domestic dogs, that's for sure. It's a lot of people own pets up here. Grizzly bears, but they don't really tend to come into town too frequently. If we move closer to the coast, up to Tuktoyaktuk, which is about 100 kilometers further north, occasionally people will come into contact with polar bears up there as well. And as far as other animals, I'm not entirely sure. We've got wolves as well. Do you think of anything else?
In town, the most frequent animal that I would see is the red fox. You do see the occasional Arctic fox as well. But as the climate's changing, things are warming up. The red foxes, like you have in the south, are moving further north, and we see them everywhere. And then, of course, there's lots of birds.
Yeah.
I like that you threw birds in there as well, just to tie it in.
Gotta get the birds back.
A lot of audience members are wondering, since you've been talking about all these different types of animals outside of the tent, and to relate it back to birds, Ling has a specific question about that peregrine falcon, or even some of the other predatory birds that will dive down from their nests if you get too close. And they're wondering really how much of a threat is that to humans? And, you know, will they continue to go after you if you're kind of in and around their nests in that area?
I mean, if they hit you, it'll definitely hurt. The only bird that has ever hit anyone that I've been close to was the Arctic tern, which, if we're talking about migratory birds, the Arctic tern is one of the coolest. It actually migrates all the way from Antarctica to the Arctic every year and then back. And they do like to ground nest. So they put their nests on the ground, and if you're on the coast and you're near a ground nest, the terns will actually swoop down and hit you with their beaks, and they will actually make you bleed, which is not very fun. No. And I've definitely seen that happen. So if you're ever on an Arctic coast and you see some terns in the air, make sure you wear a hat.
Or a helmet.
My goodness, it kind of sounds like some of the crows that we have here in the spring and summertime. Another great question coming in from our audience is, do female and male birds sound different?
This is a great question. I'm not going to speak for every single bird, but generally, yeah. Usually it's the males that will be calling out to the females. All right, so usually, same as kind of like the peacock thing, where peacocks have the prettier, bigger feathers to attract the female. That's what will happen with a lot of songbirds as well.
And one last possible wish, I'm not sure how possible this will be, but people are wondering if it's possible to see outside of the tent. Do you have a setup out there where you can give us a glimpse to what is outside of your tent right now?
Yeah, of course, we can move the camera back.
Sure.
Because we're in town, there's just a lot of houses and things, so it's not the most interesting view, but that is one of the coolest things that you'll be able to see here.
Cool. And as you're moving the camera, I'll just start into a little bit of our wrap up. Audience, I know there were a few more questions out there that you had that we aren't going to be able to get to at this time. But what our tech Madeline's going to do, she's going to pop down a link that Parks Canada has given us today, and also contact information for Ellen and Kyle, so that if you'd like to learn a little bit more about Arctic birds, Arctic life, a little bit more about Parks Canada research, you can actually use those contacts and those links to find out a little bit more after today. All right, I think it looks like we are... we had a little travel outside the tent there, short and quick. Did you have a chance to get a look around there, audience? Yeah, a lot of similar looking things to what we have here, and some different looking things as well. I don't know about you, audience, but I sure learned a lot about Arctic birds today. And as I started to learn a little bit more about Arctic life myself, I was so surprised to learn about how many birds that we have around here in Vancouver, British Columbia, for instance, that are connected to the Arctic and that make their way there for their migrations. And I'm sure going to listen out for some of those bird calls that Ellen and Kyle have been sharing with us when those birds are in town. If you would like to learn a little bit more about the Arctic Voices Gallery here at Science World, you can pop onto Science World's website. We've got an Arctic Voices feature gallery page, so you can tune in there to see the gallery from afar, or I'd love if you came and saw me within the Arctic Voices Gallery. Well, not me, but the cool gallery itself. I will be there and say hi if you'd like here at Science World. But otherwise, we're wrapping up and heading out for today. Thank you again to our featured guests, Ellen and Kyle, for your talk today, especially live from the Arctic. It was really cool to learn about the life around you and even see outside of your tent where you are today. And thank you, audience, for joining in with us today. Until next time, we hope to see you at our next talk or at a future talk. Thanks, everyone.